A cat kept coming home heavier than he left, wearing a collar his owner had never bought him. She assumed the obvious thing. She was about to find out how wrong that assumption was. Mary Lord Barr had taken in a gray kitten a couple years earlier. Feeble, friendly, the kind of stray that shows up at your door half-starved and just decides to stay. She named him Peachy. From the start, he wasn't the type of cat content to sit inside all day, curled up on a windowsill. He came and went as he pleased, disappearing for stretches of a day or more, always turning back up for food and a place to sleep, the way plenty of outdoor cats do, without anyone thinking twice about it. If a story like this is worth your time, go ahead and subscribe now, and write in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and what time it is where you are. Okay, here's where it gets strange. One day, Peachy came home wearing a collar Mary had never put on him. Not a huge shock on its own. Cats pick up strange things, get into strange places, rub against things that leave marks or attach themselves to their fur. But then she noticed something else. He was heavier, rounder around the middle, well fed in a way that didn't quite match how much she'd actually been feeding him lately, and she started paying closer attention every time he wandered back through the door. She checked the collar itself first, half expecting to find a phone number, an address, something simple that would explain it in 30 seconds. There was nothing like that, just a collar, plain, unfamiliar, clearly not one she bought, clearly not something that had come from her house at all. It didn't take her long to put together. Someone else was feeding her cat, and feeding him well. Somewhere out there, another household had apparently taken him in too, without either side knowing the other existed at all. She thought about it for a day or two, turning the idea over. Should she try to stop it? Keep him inside from now on? Put an end to whatever arrangement he'd worked out for himself without asking anyone's permission? Some part of her considered it might be simplest to just start locking the cat door and call it settled. But another part of her was too curious to let it go that easily. If someone else really was taking care of her cat, she wanted to at least know who. Most people, finding proof their cat had a second family, might have felt a little betrayed by that discovery. I probably would have, if I'm honest. There's something strange about realizing an animal you fed and cared for had been quietly living a whole separate life a few streets over, without you ever suspecting a thing. It raises an odd kind of question about what exactly you're owed by a pet, and what a pet actually owes you back, if anything at all. Mary didn't seem to sit with that question for long, though. Whatever irritation she might have felt gave way pretty fast to something closer to amusement, and then to genuine curiosity about who was on the other end of this. Cats, especially ones allowed to roam freely, don't experience ownership the way we do, and understanding that changes how the rest of this makes sense. A cat's territory can easily stretch across several houses on a single street, and there's nothing biologically stopping a cat from forming separate bonds with separate humans, each one convinced they're the only family he has. Vets and animal behaviorists have documented this for years. It's common enough that shelters sometimes get calls about a stray that turns out to already have not one but two perfectly good homes. Sometimes three, none of them aware of each other until something like a collar or a chipskin gives it away. Most people, finding out their cat had a second family, might have gotten upset. Mary didn't. She got curious. She wrote a note, short and a little cheeky, folded it small enough to tuck under the mystery collar, and sent Peachy off on his next disappearance with it attached, half wondering if she was being ridiculous, writing a message to a stranger through a cat who couldn't explain any of it himself. "My name is Peachy the cat," it read. "More or less, I already have a family who loves me very much. Whoever you are, thank you for taking care of him too." Then she waited. A day passed, then another. long enough that she started to wonder if the other household would even notice the note at all, or this whole strange little mystery was about to just fade out quietly the way most odd coincidences eventually do. He did come back, days later, wearing the same collar, with a new note folded underneath it, tucked in exactly the same spot Mary had left hers. Here he is called Huarache, it said. It appears he does have 2 houses. Haha. Greetings. So he had a second name. 2. Not just a second address, but an entire second identity, complete with whatever daily routine came with it. For a moment, before she even finished reading it, Mary felt something tighten in her chest that she hadn't expected. What if this other family decided they wanted him full-time? What if they had more room, more time, a yard he clearly liked enough to keep coming back to? She'd raise him from a sick, feeble kitten nobody else wanted. The idea of some stranger a few blocks away having any kind of claim to that felt, for just a second, like something worth being afraid of. I don't know how most people would have reacted to finding that out, that their cat had been living an entire parallel life under a completely different name, close enough that he could walk between both houses on his own 4 feet, without anyone noticing the pattern for who knows how long. Some might have felt betrayed, honestly. A pet choosing to spend serious time somewhere else can feel personal, even when it obviously isn't, even when the cat himself has no concept of loyalty the way we define it. Mary didn't take it that way. Whatever fear had tightened in her chest a few days earlier eased the moment she read past the joke in that second note. Nothing about it sounded like a claim or a demand or anyone trying to take what wasn't theirs. She wrote back again, introducing herself properly this time, explaining how she'd found him as a sick kitten years earlier and given him a home when nobody else would. The other family wrote back too, just as friendly, just as amused by the whole situation, with no mention of wanting him for themselves alone. It turned out they lived only a few blocks away, close enough that Pesci's daily rounds were basically a short walk in either direction, not some elaborate secret operation at all. Just a cat, doing what cats do, quietly maintaining 2 entirely separate relationships nobody else knew about until a caller gave the whole thing away. The notes kept going back and forth after that. Not arguments, not custody negotiations, just 2 households, now aware of each other, using the one thing they had in common, a cat who apparently loved them both, to become something like neighbors instead of strangers. Mary ended up sharing the whole story publicly. Photos of Pesci and the little handwritten notes included, mostly because she found the whole thing too funny and too sweet not to tell people about. It spread fast, picked up by outlets well beyond her own small circle of friends. People who'd never think twice about their own outdoor cat's daily disappearances suddenly found themselves wondering the same thing. Where does mine actually go? And who else might be feeding him behind my back? One woman, reading about it elsewhere, admitted her own cat used to come home smelling like someone else's cigarette smoke and perfume, tune a breath one day, would smoke the next, and she genuinely never thought to ask where any of it was coming from until she read about a cat exactly like her own. Pesci, for his part, kept doing exactly what he'd always done, wandering off, coming home, getting fed twice over by 2 different households who now waved at each other on the street, instead of wondering where the other cat food bowl kept coming from. Nobody ever fully explained why Pesci chose to split himself between 2 homes instead of settling into just one. Cats generally don't explain themselves, and there was no way to ask him directly what made one house feel incomplete without the other. He just did what felt right to him. Quietly, for who knows how long, until a collar he wasn't supposed to be wearing turned 2 separate lives into one very unusual friendship between strangers who otherwise might never have spoken at all. Not every version of the story ends the same way, worth mentioning. Similar situations have played out elsewhere with a lot less warmth. Families discovering a shared cat and ending up in actual disputes over who really owned him, sometimes dragging on for months, neither side willing to just let it be. Whatever made this particular case go so smoothly probably came down to nothing more than two people willing to see it as something to laugh about instead of something to fight over, and maybe a little luck that neither family felt like they'd been the one deceived. Personally, I don't think Peachy ever saw it as choosing one family over the other. I think, in whatever way a cat understands love, he just had enough of it in him for two houses instead of one. You think a pet can genuinely love two different families at the same time, the same way, with nothing held back for either one? Right? Yes, if you believe he loved them both completely. Subscribe if this one got to you. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.